Taeho stood before the seven Velrothi and knew his next words would decide everything, not just for him, but for all of humanity's future with this alien species. Behind the camera that connected this room to the human command center, his mother was watching. Captain Minho was watching. Everyone was watching. He thought about Ambassador Daesung's coded message from Earth. He thought about how quickly the ambassador had pushed for that specific moon. He thought about how Earth desperately needed resources and might not care about alien burial grounds. Then he thought about Kreshitar's lessons, about truth-speaking, about matching words to body to spirit. Taeho took a breath and spoke in Velrothi language, using all the sounds and movements he had learned. I do not know for certain what Earth government knows, but I believe they do know. I believe they were told and chose to ask anyway. I am ashamed this is true. The silence that followed felt like forever. Kreshitar's eyes did not leave Taeho's face. The other Velrothi remained completely still. Then Kreshitar made a sound that was unmistakably a sigh. Why do you speak truth against your own kind? He asked. Taeho had to think hard to find the right words in Velrothi. Because you taught me that unity begins with truth. Because lies separate us. Because I want humans and Velrothi to be friends more than I want to protect bad choices. Another Velrothi, a female with silver-streaked fur, leaned forward. Her name was Vrashna, and she was the huntmaster of the delegation. What would you do instead, small truth speaker? Your kind needs resources. We will not give our sacred moon. Where is the path forward? This was it. Taeho had spent the last night thinking about this exact question. There is another place, he said carefully. I studied the star maps. 3 days' journey from here is an asteroid belt. It has the same minerals as the sacred moon. My people could mine there. It belongs to no one. It harms no one. Vrashna's ears tilted in surprise. You studied this yourself? Yes, I wanted to find a solution. A real one. Kreshitar made a low rumbling sound that might have been approval or might have been thoughtfulness. You are very young, he said. But you think like an elder. This is unusual. I just think like someone who wants both sides to be happy, Taeho replied. Kreshitar stood. The other Velrothi stood with him. For a moment, Taeho feared they would leave. But instead, Kreshitar walked forward until he stood directly in front of the camera. He reached out with one massive clawed hand and touched the screen where Taeho's image appeared. We name you Taeho Ren Shikara, Kreshitar said formally. Small speaker who hears truly. You are the first human to be given a Velrothi name. You are the first human we trust. Taeho felt tears starting in his eyes, but he blinked them back. I am honored beyond words, Elder Kreshitar. We will accept your solution about the asteroid belt, Kreshitar continued. But we have one condition. You must be present at all future negotiations between our kinds. You must translate not just words but truth. Can you promise this? I promise, Taeho said without hesitation. Back in the command center, chaos erupted. Captain Minho was already composing messages to send to Earth. Hyerin was crying with pride and relief. Jiwon was cheering loudly. Only Ambassador Daesung was silent. His face was red with anger and humiliation. When the connection with the Velrothi ended, he turned on Taeho immediately. You undermined Earth's position, Daesung shouted. You admitted we knew about the burial ground? You had no authority to do that. He had my authority, Captain Minho said firmly. And he did exactly what I ordered him to do. He told the truth. The truth could have waited until after we secured better terms, Daesung argued. Now they think we're dishonorable. They think we tried to desecrate their sacred places. We did try to do that, Dr. Youngho said quietly from the back of the room. Or at least someone on Earth did. The boy just refused to lie about it. Ambassador Daesung looked around the room and saw no support for his position. His career had just been destroyed by a 12-year-old child and everyone knew it. This isn't over, he said coldly. Earth will hear about this, he stormed out. Nobody tried to stop him. Captain Minho put a hand on Taeho's shoulder. You did the right thing. It took courage to speak truth when lying would have been easier. Will Earth be angry? Taeho asked. Probably, Captain Minho admitted. But they'll get over it when they realize we actually achieved something. We have a trade agreement. We have an alliance. We have trust. That's worth more than one mining site. Over the next week, messages flew back and forth between the ship and Earth. Some officials were furious about how negotiations had gone. They felt Taeho had overstepped his authority. They felt Captain Minho had been too lenient. They wanted Ambassador Daesung to resume control, But other officials saw the bigger picture. Humanity had made first contact with an advanced alien species and actually succeeded. For the first time, humans had an ally among the stars. And it was all because a child had chosen honesty over politics. In the end, Earth agreed to the new arrangement. The asteroid belt mining rights were negotiated properly, with Taiho translating. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchange programs were established. The Velrothi invited human ships to visit their worlds, and through it all, Taiho was there, translating not just words but meanings, helping both sides understand each other. Building bridges between species, Kreshtar continued teaching him. The lessons went beyond language now. The old Velrothi taught Taiho about Velrothi philosophy, history, and culture. He taught him about honor and truth and the importance of unity. Taiho absorbed it all like a sponge, his notebooks filling with observations and insights. Dr. Borum eventually came to Taiho with a request. "I want to learn your system," she said stiffly. "I want you to teach me how you decode their language." It was the closest she would ever come to an apology. Taiho accepted it. He spent hours teaching Dr. Borum and other scientists his notation system and observation techniques. Slowly, other humans began to understand Velrothi language. It would take years before anyone else was as fluent as Taiho, but the foundation was laid. Hieron's career transformed overnight. She went from being a mid-level scientist to the head of the xenolinguistics department. Earth promoted her, gave her funding, and asked her to establish protocols for communicating with other alien species if they were ever discovered. Jiwan was promoted too. She became a full lieutenant and was assigned as Taiho's personal security officer. She took the job seriously but never stopped being his friend. She still sneaked him extra desserts from the officers' mess hall. One day, 3 months after first breakthrough, Taiho sat with Kreshtar for a lesson. The old Velrothi seemed more thoughtful than usual. "You have learned much, small speaker," Kreshtar said. "You speak our language better than any human. Better than many young Velrothi even. But language is not the greatest thing you have learned." "What is the greatest thing?" Taiho asked. "You have learned that being small does not mean being powerless. You have learned that truth is stronger than lies. You have learned that one voice speaking honestly can change the fate of worlds." Kreshtar's eyes gleamed. "These lessons will serve you well in the years ahead." "What do you mean?" Taiho asked. "You are young now, but you will grow. And when you are grown, you will face many more challenges. Humans and Velrothi are just the beginning. There are many species in the galaxy. Some are kind, some are dangerous, some are mysterious. Humans will need bridge builders like you to navigate it all." Taiho thought about this. He thought about the vast universe beyond the ship, about all the aliens humans had not yet met, about all the potential friendships and conflicts waiting to happen. It felt overwhelming and exciting at the same time. "Will you teach me more?" Taiho asked. "About other species? About how to build bridges?" Kreshtar's ears lifted in approval. "I will teach you everything I know, small speaker. You have earned this knowledge. But remember, the most important lesson is the one you already learned. Listen when others do not. See what others miss. Speak truth even when truth is hard. Do these things and you will never lose your way." Taiho nodded seriously. He would remember. He would always remember. That night he sat in his small room with his mother. Hieron was reviewing reports, but she kept glancing at her son with a mixture of pride and wonder. "I still can't believe you did all this," she said. "My little boy making history." "I just paid attention, Mom," Taiho said. "Everyone else was too busy trying to be important. I just tried to understand." "That's wisdom," Hieron said softly. "Real wisdom. Most adults never learn it." Taiho looked at his collection of notebooks, now dozens of them filled with observations and translations and insights. Each one represented hours of watching, thinking, and learning. Each one was proof that big accomplishments could come from small observers. "What happens now?" Taiho asked. "Now we go home," Hieron said. "Earth wants us back. They want you to establish a training program for other translators. They want you to write textbooks about Velrothi language. They want you to advise the government on alien relations." She paused. "They want to make you famous." Taiho made a face. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to learn more languages. Talk to more aliens. Help more species understand each other." Hieron smiled. "Then that's what we'll do. Fame or no fame, you'll keep doing what you do best." The next 2 weeks changed Taiho's life completely. Every day he spent hours in communication sessions with Kreshtar. The old Velrathi was a strict but patient teacher. He would make a sound or movement, wait for Taiho to copy it, then correct him with another demonstration. Over and over until Taiho got it right. It was the hardest thing Taiho had ever done. His throat hurt from trying to make sounds it was not designed for. His legs ached from holding Velrathi postures. His head pounded from concentrating so hard, but he loved every minute of it. The other humans watched these sessions with mixed feelings. Some were excited that communication was finally happening. Others, like Ambassador Daesung and Dr. Borum, seemed angry that a child was at the center of everything. They had spent years preparing for first contact, and now a 12-year-old boy was doing what they could not. Captain Minho made Taiho's position official. He gave him the title of Junior Xenolinguistic Consultant. It was a made-up title that meant nothing officially, but it gave Taiho the authority to attend all meetings with the Velrathi. Hyerin was so proud she cried. Jiwon gave Taiho a special patch to wear on his jumpsuit with his new title on it. Dr. Youngho surprisingly apologized. He found Taiho in the mess hall one morning and sat down across from him. "I was wrong about you, kid," he said simply. "I let pride make me stupid. That was my mistake." Taiho did not know what to say, so he just nodded. Dr. Youngho pushed a small bottle across the table. "Stimulants. Medical grade. They'll help you stay sharp during the long sessions. But use them carefully. Don't tell your mother I gave them to you." From then on, Dr. Youngho actually helped Taiho. He provided medical insights about Velrathi biology that helped Taiho understand how they produced certain sounds. It was not a friendship, but it was respect, and that mattered. Dr. Borum never apologized. She watched Taiho's success with cold eyes and said nothing. But Taiho noticed she had started asking to review his translation notes. She was learning from his system without admitting it. During one long session, Kreshitar began teaching Taiho about Velrathi history. He spoke slowly, using simpler language combinations that Taiho could better understand. He told Taiho about how the Velrathi had once been slaves to another species, a cruel race called the Verith who had hunted Velrathi like animals. "We won our freedom through unity and truth," Kreshtar communicated. "We learned that speaking truly, with all parts of self in agreement, creates power." The Verith spoke with forked tongues. Their words said one thing, their bodies another. We learned to do opposite. Our word and body and spirit all speak same truth. This is why we cannot trust humans. You speak with forked tongues like Verith did. Taiho felt a chill when he translated this for the observers. It explained so much. The Velrathi were not just upset about poor communication. They were traumatized by their history. They saw humans making the same mistakes their ancient enemies had made. "How do we prove we're not like the Verith?" Taiho asked carefully in Velrathi language. Kreshtar's ears moved in a pattern that meant sadness. "By speaking truth even when truth causes pain. By matching body to word to spirit. By being unable to lie with any part of self. This is what we look for. This is what we have not seen in humans." That night, Taiho reported everything to Captain Minho. The captain listened carefully, his face growing more thoughtful. "So they're testing our honesty," he said. "They want to see if we can be truthful even when it hurts us." "I think so," Taiho said. "They don't just want to talk with us. They want to trust us." Ambassador Daesung, who was also in the meeting, made a dismissive sound. "Trust is built over time. We just need to close this basic trade agreement and establish regular contact. The rest will come later." But Captain Minho looked doubtful. "I'm not sure the Velrathi see it that way." He was right. The next day brought a crisis that tested everything. The Velrathi had agreed to consider a trade agreement with Earth. Humans wanted access to certain mining zones in Velrathi space. The Velrathi wanted access to human agricultural technology. It seemed like a fair exchange. The negotiations had been going well, with Taiho translating every detail. Then Ambassador Daesung received a coded message from Earth. He read it during a break in negotiations, and his face changed. Taiho noticed immediately. So did Jiwon, who was standing guard nearby. "What's wrong?" Jiwon asked quietly. "Nothing," Daesung said too quickly. "Just routine updates from home." But when negotiations resumed, Daesung started pushing for something new. He wanted the Velrathi to grant access to a specific moon in their space. He said it had mineral deposits that Earth needed desperately. He pressed hard, using diplomatic language and persuasive arguments. Taiho translated as accurately as he could. But something felt wrong. He could see the Velrothi becoming upset. Their tail movements showed agitation. Their ears kept flattening. When Taeho translated Daesung's requests, Kreshtar's response was cold and final. That moon is forbidden. It is sacred ground. No mining, no visits, no discussion. Taeho translated this back to Daesung. The ambassador's jaw tightened. Tell them we would pay premium rates. Tell them it would only be temporary. Tell them we would restore the land when finished. Taeho did as instructed, but his stomach felt sick. Something about this was wrong. Very wrong. Kreshtar stood up. All the other Velrothi stood with him. Their body language screamed anger and betrayal. Kreshtar spoke in rapid, harsh sounds that Taeho struggled to follow. He's saying we are just like the Verith, Taeho translated. He's saying we speak soft words but want to violate their sacred places. He's saying we have learned nothing. He's saying they were fools to think humans could be different. Tell them we mean no disrespect, Daesung ordered. Tell them we just want to discuss options. But Kreshtar was already walking away. The other Velrothi followed. The communication session ended abruptly. That night, Taeho could not sleep. He kept thinking about the sacred moon and why it upset the Velrothi so much. He remembered something Kreshtar had said about their history, about freedom and ancestors. He got up and went to the ship's computer. He searched through all the data they had collected about Velrothi space. He found the moon Daesung had asked about. He read everything they knew about it. Then he understood, and he felt sick. The moon was not just sacred. It was a burial ground. It was where the Velrothi had buried their dead for thousands of years, including those who had died fighting for freedom from the Verith. It was the most holy place in their entire culture, and Earth wanted to mine it. Taeho went to find his mother. Hyron was awake working late in her office. When Taeho told her what he had discovered, her face went pale. Earth couldn't have known, she said. It must be a mistake. They wouldn't ask us to mine a burial ground. What if they did know? Taeho asked quietly. Hyron did not answer. She did not want to believe that Earth would do such a thing, but the possibility hung in the air between them. The next morning, Captain Minho called an emergency meeting. Taeho and his mother were both summoned. So was Ambassador Daesung along with all the senior staff. The Velrothi have sent a final message, Captain Minho said. They're giving us one last chance. They want the human who speaks truly to come before them. Alone. No other humans. Just him. Everyone understood what the human who speaks truly meant. They wanted Taeho. Absolutely not, Hyron said immediately. He's a child. I won't let you send him into danger. It's not dangerous, Mom, Taeho said quietly. They won't hurt me. They want to test me. They want to see if at least one human can speak real truth. Test you how? Captain Minho asked. Taeho thought about everything he had learned. About Velrothi culture and history. About truth-speaking and trust. They're going to ask me a question they already know the answer to. They want to see if I'll lie to protect humans or if I'll tell the truth even if it hurts. Ambassador Daesung stood up quickly. You will not undermine Earth's position. You're part of this crew. You represent humanity. You'll tell them what I order you to tell them. Taeho looked at the ambassador. Then he looked at Captain Minho. What should I do? Captain Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone. Tell them the truth, Taeho. Whatever they ask, you tell them the absolute truth. Even if it costs us everything. Because if we lose their trust, we've already lost everything that matters. Ambassador Daesung protested loudly. But Captain Minho overruled him. This is my ship and my decision. The boy tells the truth. 2 hours later, Taeho stood alone in front of the Velrothi delegation. 7 pairs of yellow eyes watched him. Kreshtar sat in the center, his face unreadable. The old Velrothi spoke. His words were simple and clear. Does your kind know the moon you request is where our honored dead rest? Taeho's heart pounded. This was the moment. He could lie. He could say Earth did not know. He could protect Ambassador Daesung and all the humans. Or he could tell the truth and face the consequences. Captain Minho made a decision that changed everything. He gave Taeho permission to try. Not because he truly believed a 12-year-old could solve what the best minds of humanity could not, but because, as he said, they had nothing left to lose. Ambassador Daesung protested loudly. Dr. Borum called it a waste of precious time. Dr. Young-ho said they would all look like fools. But Captain Minho outranked them all, and his word was final. Taeho would have one chance to prove his theory. The plan was simple but terrifying. The Velrothi would be asked to send another message. This time, Taiho would watch through a direct video feed while listening to the audio. He would try to translate not just the sounds, but the complete communication with all its layers. Hyron stayed by her son's side as they prepared. She looked more nervous than Taiho felt. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "If it doesn't work, they'll be even worse to you than before." "It will work, Mom," Taiho said. He was not being arrogant. He simply knew he was right. He had spent too many hours watching and learning. He had seen the patterns too clearly. "I can do this." The command center filled with people. It seemed like every crew member who was not on essential duty came to watch. Some came because they were curious. Some came because they hoped the boy would succeed. Some came because they wanted to see him fail and prove that children should stay out of adult business. Jiwon stood near the back, her arms crossed and her face worried. She had become Taiho's friend over these months, and she did not want to see him humiliated. Captain Minho sent a message to the Velrothi chamber, requesting a communication session. For several long minutes there was no response. Taiho's heart pounded. What if they refused? What if they had already given up on humanity? Then the screen flickered to life. The Velrothi appeared, all 7 of them standing in a formal arrangement. In the center stood the largest one, a massive being with gray-streaked fur and scars across his face. This was Kreshtar, the eldest of the delegation. He had never spoken to humans before. He had always stood in the back, watching with cold yellow eyes that showed nothing but contempt. Now Kreshtar stood front and center, and Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. This was a test. A real test. They were sending their eldest, their most important speaker, to see if the humans could finally understand. Kreshtar began to speak. The sounds that came from him were complex and layered. Low rumbles mixed with higher chirps, growls blended into purrs. At the same time, his tail moved in a specific pattern, slow sweeps with quick flicks at the end. His ears rotated forward, then back, then to the sides in a sequence that repeated 3 times. The fur on his neck rippled with color changes, dark to light to dark again. Everyone in the command center waited. The ship's computer produced its translation. Sky circle wrong path, bitter leaf return stone. Nonsense. But Taiho was writing frantically in his notebook. His hand moved so fast it was almost a blur. He cross-referenced what he saw with his documented patterns. He matched sounds with movements with color changes. The language was even more complex than he had thought, but the patterns were there. They were absolutely there. "Well," Ambassador Daesung said impatiently. "Can you translate it or not?" Taiho held up one finger, asking for time. He wrote a few more notes. He checked his references. Then he looked up at the screen where Kreshtar waited, motionless. He said, Taiho began, his voice quiet but steady. "We of the ancient lines have watched your kind for 3 cycles of seasons. You speak words, but your bodies speak different words. You show teeth, but your scents show fear. You claim friendship, but your movements claim dominance. We do not trust speakers whose parts speak in different voices. We leave when the star shows twice more. Prove you can speak truly or remain forever silent to our people." The command center was so quiet that Taiho could hear his own heartbeat. Everyone stared at him. Then they stared at the screen. Kreshtar had not moved, but his ears had shifted slightly forward. His tail had stopped moving. "How do we know if that's correct?" Dr. Youngho asked. "We ask them," Captain Minho said simply. He typed a command into his console. "I'm sending what Taiho said through the computer as text. We'll see if they confirm." They waited. Taiho felt sweat on his palms. What if he was wrong? What if he had just made things worse? Then something happened that no one expected. Kreshtar's mouth opened and he made a sound that was clearly laughter. It was not human laughter, but the meaning was unmistakable. The other Velrothi behind him made similar sounds. Their tails lifted high and curved in what could only be pleasure or approval. The ship's computer received a response. It was one word in English, painstakingly typed out by the Velrothi. "Correct." The command center exploded with noise. People started talking all at once. Some were celebrating. Some were shocked. Captain Minho actually smiled, which was something Taiho had never seen before. Erin grabbed her son and hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. "You did it," she whispered. "Taiho, you actually did it." But Ambassador Daesung was not celebrating. His face had gone red and he looked angry rather than happy. "One translation proves nothing," he said loudly over the noise. It could be coincidence. We need more proof. Taiho looked at the screen. Kreshtar was still watching, still waiting. The old Velrathi made a gesture with one clawed hand, then another, then spoke a short phrase of combined sounds. He's asking if I can understand that too, Taiho said. Well, Captain Minho asked. Can you? Taiho studied the movements, listened to the sounds, and checked his notes. This was a simpler message, more direct. He says the young one who sees truly should speak directly to him, without computer words between us. Everyone turned to look at Captain Minho. This was a huge decision, allowing direct communication between a child and the alien delegation leader. If it went wrong, it could mean disaster. Do you want to do this? Captain Minho asked Taiho. Yes, Taiho said immediately. Can you speak their language back to them, or only understand it? Taiho hesitated. This was the question he had been afraid of. Understanding was one thing. Actually producing the sounds and movements correctly was something else entirely. I can try, he said. I've been practicing in private, but I don't know if I'm good enough yet. Jiwan spoke up from the back. Let him try. What's the worst that happens? We're already losing them anyway. Ambassador Daesung started to protest again, but Captain Minho cut him off. Enough, the boy tries. Everyone else stays quiet unless I say otherwise. Taiho took a deep breath. He had memorized several basic phrases. Greetings, requests, apologies. He had practiced the sounds in his tiny room, trying to make his human throat and mouth produce alien noises. He had practiced the movements, trying to make his human body move in Velrathi ways. Now he had to do it for real. He stood up from his chair and positioned himself in front of the camera so Kreshitar could see his whole body. Then he tried to remember everything he had learned. He dropped into a lower stance, bending his knees the way he had seen subordinate Velrathi do. He tilted his head to the left and down, showing respect. Then he made the sounds. It came out rough and wrong. His throat could not produce some of the frequencies. But he got close. He combined a low rumble with a higher sound and a clicking noise. At the same time, he moved his arms in a specific pattern, trying to substitute for the tail movements he could not make. He was saying, or trying to say, "This small speaker asks to learn from the wise elder." On the screen, Kreshitar went completely still. The other Velrathi behind him made sounds of surprise. For a moment, Taiho thought he had made a terrible mistake. Maybe he had said something insulting without meaning to. Maybe his pronunciation was so bad it was offensive. Then Kreshitar did something no Velrathi had done since first contact with humanity. He stepped forward until his face filled the screen. He looked directly at Taiho with those cold yellow eyes, and slowly, deliberately, he raised one clawed hand and placed it over his heart. The computer provided no translation for the gesture. It did not need to. Everyone in the command center understood. It was a gesture of respect, of recognition, of acknowledgement that something important had just happened. Kreshitar spoke again, this time slowly and clearly. Taiho listened and translated. The elder says I have spoken with an infant's voice, but a true heart. He says no human has tried to speak properly before. He says, Taiho paused, making sure he had it right. He says he will teach me the true speech if I am willing to learn. Hieron's hand went to her mouth. Captain Minho leaned forward in his chair. Even Ambassador Daesung looked stunned. Tell him yes, Captain Minho said. Tell him you accept. Taiho tried to form the response. It took him 3 attempts to get the sounds even close to correct. But Kreshitar waited patiently, and when Taiho finally got it right, the old Velrathi's ears lifted in what had to be approval. The next 3 days were terrible for everyone on Harmony's Dawn. The Velrathi refused to come out of their chamber. The human crew walked around with tight faces and worried eyes. Captain Minho held emergency meetings every few hours. Ambassador Daesung wanted the ship to leave immediately, but Captain Minho said they had to try one more time to fix things. Taiho spent those days watching and listening. He was not allowed anywhere near the diplomatic area anymore, but Jiwan helped him. The security officer felt bad for the lonely boy, and she thought maybe Taiho's strange hobby of drawing aliens was actually interesting. She did not believe it meant anything, but at least someone was paying attention to him. Jiwan sneaked Taiho into the security observation room late at night. From there, he could watch video feeds from cameras placed all around the Velrathi chamber. Taiho sat for hours, his eyes glued to the screens. his hand constantly moving across the pages of his notebook. He watched how the Velrathi moved around their space. He saw them eating, talking to each other, and resting. He noticed that when they ate, their tails draped on the floor in relaxed curves. When they talked about serious things, their tails stayed lifted and moved in specific patterns. When they were worried, which seemed to be most of the time now, their ears kept turning toward the door as if expecting danger. The young Velrathi who had supposedly attacked Ambassador Daesung sat apart from the others most of the time. The other aliens brought him food and touched his shoulders gently as they passed. Taeho wrote down everything. This was not how a group treated someone who had done something wrong. This was how a group treated someone who had done something brave. You really think you're figuring something out? Jiwon asked one night. She sat next to Taeho with a cup of coffee watching him work. I think their language is not just sounds, Taeho said without looking up from his notebook. I think they talk with their whole bodies. The sounds, the way they move, maybe even smells we can't detect. It all works together. Jiwon looked at the screen showing the Velrathi. That sounds complicated. It is, Taeho agreed. But I think I'm starting to understand parts of it. The next morning, Taeho made a mistake. He left his notebook on a table in the mess hall while he went to get food. Dr. Borum found it. The lead scientist picked up the notebook and started flipping through the pages. When Taeho came back and saw what was happening, his stomach dropped. What is this nonsense? Dr. Borum asked loudly. Other crew members turned to look. Are you playing scientist with your little drawings? Taeho reached for his notebook, but Dr. Borum held it away. Please give it back, Taeho said quietly. Ear positions, tail movements, fur color codes, Dr. Borum read from the pages, his voice mocking. Do you think you're going to solve alien communication with children's observations? We have spent years studying these signals. We have the most advanced computers humanity has ever built. And you think you, a child, can do better with a paper notebook? Taeho's face burned red, but he said nothing. He just stood there with his hand out, waiting for his notebook back. Dr. Youngho walked over and looked at the notebook over Dr. Borum's shoulder. Oh, this is rich, he said with a mean laugh. The kid thinks he's a genius. Next he'll be telling us he can talk to them. Dr. Borum tossed the notebook back to Taeho. Stay out of the way, boy. You're wasting resources and time. This is work for real scientists, not children playing pretend. Taeho grabbed his notebook and ran out of the mess hall. He heard laughter behind him. His eyes stung with tears, but he refused to let them fall. He would not cry. He would not give them that satisfaction. He found his mother in her small office. Hyeron was staring at her computer screen, looking at endless lines of data that meant nothing. When she saw Taeho's face, she immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked. Taeho told her about Dr. Borum and Dr. Youngho. Hyeron's face grew tight with anger. I'll talk to them, she promised. They had no right to treat you that way. Mom, Taeho said, can I show you something? He opened his notebook and started explaining his system. He showed her the patterns he had found. He explained his theory about multimodal communication. Hyeron listened, really listened for the first time in weeks. As she looked at her son's careful observations, her expression changed from sympathy to surprise to something that might have been respect. Taeho, she said slowly, this is actually quite sophisticated. Where did you learn to do this kind of analysis? I just watched, Taeho said simply. Everyone else is trying to hear them. I tried to see them. Hyeron stood up and started pacing. You might be onto something. Multimodal communication is rare but not impossible. Some Earth species use it. Bees dance and release pheromones. Elephants use sound at different frequencies along with physical gestures. If the Velrathi do something similar but more complex, she trailed off, thinking hard. Will you show this to the others? Taeho asked hopefully. Hyeron hesitated. She knew what the other scientists thought of her son. She knew they would dismiss anything that came from a child. But she also knew they were running out of time. The Velrathi had sent a message through the ship's computer that morning. It was simple and clear. They would leave in 48 hours. If the humans could not communicate properly by then, the Velrathi would close their space to humanity forever. Let me think about how to present this, Hyeron said. I need to be careful. If I do this wrong, they'll reject it just because it came from you. Taeho nodded. He understood. It was not fair, but he understood. That evening, another alarm rang through the ship. This time it was different. Not an emergency alarm. A message alert. The Velrothi were trying to communicate something important. Everyone gathered in the command center. Captain Minho played the message over the speakers. It was a long series of sounds that meant nothing to human ears. Growls, purrs, sharp barks, low rumbles. The ship's computer tried to translate it but produced only gibberish. Honor water, broken sand, forever starlight, meat forbidden. It makes no sense, Ambassador Daesung said angrily. They're just making noise at us. But Taiho had grabbed his notebook and was writing frantically. He had heard some of those sound patterns before. He had them documented with the body language that went with them. They're not just making noise, Taiho said before he could stop himself. The entire command center went quiet. Everyone turned to look at the small boy standing in the back. Excuse me? Captain Minho said. Taiho's mother put a hand on his shoulder. Whether to encourage him or stop him, he was not sure. But he had already spoken. He might as well continue. The sounds have meanings, but only if you know what body language goes with them, Taiho explained. His voice shook a little, but he kept going. Without seeing them, we can't understand. We need to see them while they talk. The movements matter. Dr. Borum made a disgusted sound. Captain, surely we're not going to listen to a child's theories at a time like this. But Captain Minho held up his hand for silence. He looked at Taiho with sharp, evaluating eyes. Explain, he said simply. Taiho took a deep breath and opened his notebook. I've been watching them for months. I've documented over 300 different combinations of sounds, movements, and physical changes. I think I'm starting to understand the basic grammar. It's like, imagine if every English word changed meaning depending on whether you were sitting or standing when you said it. That's what their language does, but much more complicated. The command center was completely silent now. Even Dr. Borum had stopped scoffing. Can you translate that message? Captain Minho asked. Maybe parts of it, Taiho admitted, but I'd need to see them when they send it again. I'd need to watch their bodies while they make the sounds. Ambassador Daesung laughed harshly. You want us to risk another incident so a child can watch the aliens? This is absurd. But Captain Minho was still looking at Taiho. We have 48 hours before they leave forever, he said. Right now we have nothing, zero, maybe less than zero. What do we have to lose? Our dignity, Dr. Borum muttered. Taiho pressed his nose against the cold window of the observation deck and watched the massive alien ship floating in the darkness of space. The vessel looked nothing like the human ships he had seen before. It was all curves and sharp edges at the same time, like a giant metal cat ready to pounce. He thought it was beautiful, but nobody asked him what he thought. Nobody ever asked him anything. Get away from there, a voice snapped behind him. Taiho turned to see Ambassador Daesung walking past with 3 other important-looking adults. They wore fancy uniforms with shiny badges. Taiho wore a simple gray jumpsuit that was too big for him. His mother had packed it, thinking he would grow into it during the long space journey. The 12-year-old boy moved away from the window and sat down on a nearby bench. He pulled out his worn notebook and continued drawing the strange symbols he had been working on all morning. On the page were sketches of the aliens he had glimpsed during yesterday's meeting. They looked like huge cats that walked on 2 legs. They had fur that changed colors in the light, long tails that never stopped moving, and ears that twisted in different directions. Still playing with your little drawings? Dr. Young-ho walked by carrying a tablet. He glanced at Taiho's notebook and laughed. Maybe you should draw some cartoons instead. At least those would be useful for something. Taiho said nothing. He had learned that talking back only made things worse. His mother, Hyron, had warned him to stay quiet and not bother anyone. She was busy all the time now, working with the other scientists to understand the alien language. Every day she came back to their tiny shared room looking more tired and frustrated. The ship they lived on was called Harmony's Dawn. It was humanity's first real attempt to make friends with an alien species. 3 years ago, humans had detected signals from the Velrothi civilization. The signals were clearly intelligent, clearly meant as communication, but nobody could understand them. Earth's best computers tried to translate the signals and failed. The smartest scientists studied them and found nothing but confusion. Finally, Earth decided to send a ship full of diplomats, soldiers, and scientists to meet the aliens face to face. Maybe direct contact would help, they thought. Maybe seeing each other would create understanding. It had not worked. Taiho had been on the ship for 6 months now. His mother brought him along because she had nobody back on Earth to watch him. His father had died when Taiho was very young, and Hyeron refused to leave her son behind. The ship's captain, a serious man named Minho, had not been happy about bringing a child. But Hyeron was a good enough scientist that they made an exception. Now everyone on the ship treated Taiho like he was invisible or like he was a problem they had to work around. The only person who was ever nice to him was Ji-Wan, a young security officer who sometimes sneaked him extra desserts from the officers' mess hall. Taiho returned his attention to his notebook. He was not just drawing pictures. He was trying to solve a puzzle that all the adults had given up on. During meetings between humans and Velrathi, Taiho was forced to sit in the back of the room and stay quiet. While the diplomats talked and argued and grew frustrated, Taiho watched the aliens. He noticed things. When a Velrathi was angry, their tail moved in quick, short sweeps. When they were curious, their ears pointed forward and slightly down. When they were lying or being careful with their words, a small patch of fur on their necks changed from dark to light. The adults never noticed these things because they were too busy listening to the strange sounds the aliens made. But Taiho realized something important. The sounds were only part of how the Velrathi talked. Maybe the sounds were not even the most important part. He started writing down everything he observed. He created his own symbols for different ear positions, tail movements, and fur color changes. He tried to match these physical signs with the sounds the Velrathi made. Slowly, very slowly, patterns started to appear. A loud alarm interrupted his thoughts. Taiho looked up as red lights began flashing throughout the corridor. His heart started beating faster. Emergency alarms meant something bad was happening. Captain Minho's voice came through the speakers. All personnel to stations. We have a situation in the diplomatic chamber. Security to the diplomatic chamber immediately. Taiho grabbed his notebook and ran toward the diplomatic area. He knew he was not supposed to go there, but he had to know what was happening. Other crew members rushed past him, too focused on the emergency to tell him to go back to his quarters. He reached the diplomatic chamber just as two security officers were pulling Ambassador Daesung out of the room. The ambassador's face was red and he was shouting, "That creature attacked me! It tried to kill me!" Through the open door, Taiho could see the Velrathi delegation. The aliens were standing in a tight group and they looked agitated. Their tails were lashing back and forth. Their ears were flat against their heads. One younger Velrathi stood slightly apart from the others. His claws were extended and his teeth were showing. "Close the chamber," Captain Minho ordered. The heavy doors slid shut, separating the humans from the aliens. Taiho's mother appeared at his side, grabbing his shoulder. "Taiho, what are you doing here? Go back to our quarters right now." "Mom, what happened?" Taiho asked. Hyeron looked exhausted and scared. "One of the Velrathi attacked the ambassador during negotiations." "This is very bad, Taiho. This might mean war." But Taiho was not so sure it was an attack. He had seen the young Velrathi's posture through the door. The alien's ears were not completely flat. His tail was not moving in the angry pattern Taiho had documented. Something about the whole scene felt wrong. "Mom," Taiho said quietly, "I don't think he was attacking." Hyeron was not listening. She was already walking away with the other scientists, all of them talking urgently about what to do next. Dr. Borum was saying that they should return to Earth immediately. Ambassador Daesung was demanding that the attacking Velrathi be punished. Everyone was angry and scared. Taiho stood alone in the corridor, holding his notebook tightly against his chest. Inside were dozens of pages filled with observations, patterns, and theories that nobody wanted to see. He looked at the closed door of the diplomatic chamber and made a decision. He had to find a way to make the adults listen. He had to make them understand that they were missing something important. Because if they did not understand soon, people were going to die. Maybe a lot of people. Maybe entire worlds would go to war because humans and Velrathi could not truly talk to each other. Taiho opened his notebook to a fresh page and started writing everything he had just witnessed. Every detail might matter. Every small clue could be the key to understanding. He was just a 12-year-old boy that everyone ignored. But he was also the only human who was actually seeing the Velrathi for what they were, and somehow he had to make that matter.